go through many of these kind of slides, but just to give the picture of what the setup is here, this is essentially a long-term project. Generally speaking, the overall project, our results-based program, this agri-environment scheme, is only one component, one of about 70 or 80 different actions that we have in the project. It's a short program, but I'll talk about where it sits in terms of CAP very soon as well, and that's pretty interesting. So the overall project budget is 20 million, but that's really just a seed fund as such to get and find and take in more money for these areas and for these lands. 12 of that million comes from Europe, and the rest of it comes from the other 8 or so million comes from the project partners. There's about 10 of those. I'll talk about those in a second. So we're aiming particularly at Natura 2000, which is your SACs and SPAs, and so that's the key focus of the actual project itself, and there's obviously a very broad range of stakeholders. So there's an awful lot of different wings to the project as such, between, all sorts. We go through some of them in a minute, just briefly, but we've kind of these 3 pillars as such. The central one is where I'd start with, the kind of this capacity building, and this scheme that we're talking about this evening fits in there. And the whole idea here is that we get to know and get to see how these results-based schemes work. We see what works well in them, we see what doesn't work well in them. We adapt those and make sure that when they're incorporated into CAP, which is likely the scenario, that it works as well as it can for these areas and the way that we farm in these areas. So as part of that, there'll be knowledge exchange groups and site surveys and training and all of that kind of stuff. On the far side there is this education and awareness. So there's the usual communications. You'll see a newsletter, and you'll see there'll be schools programs in the schools around these areas and whatever, and they tie into the types of the scorecards and whatever else as well that we're doing. So it's all integrated. And then on this side here as well, we're looking at the kind of actions that one does to, that might improve scores or whatever else as well, improve the quality on the ground. And that's things like the basic species control. It might be, could be road roller, it could be whatever else as well. It could be, bog restoration or fencing or whatever it might be, stock management. There could be a lot of different things. And so there's a big breadth on it, but it's all ultimately focused on and via the agri-environment side of things here. So just one thing, I've been actually a good few meetings related to the project of late, where we're looking at the issues with the Natura 2000 and farming and all of these kinds of things. And one of the biggest things that come up is red tape. And I mean, what's red tape but really just a mash of threads that Jesus, like an old tangled rope of different departments. You can't do this, you can't do that, or one will say you can do it and one will say you can't do it. So the whole idea here is that it's what they call an integrated project. So the whole idea is that the different stakeholders are at the table, and ideally and in theory it needs to work better, and this is a very good place for that to happen. There's a lot of different stakeholders there. So where we develop in this results-based program, for example, a product that we can, look for added value. So it could be the likes of Water Ireland or, Department of Agriculture, Teagasc or TU, whoever might be, that could promote that and add extra value to that, and ideally, attract additional funding for that. So just broadly on our project sites, we have, there's 35 in total project sites covering over 250,000 hectares. So we run from pretty much Galway Bay right up to North Donegal. So there's a lot in it. But for our agri-environment scheme, we're looking at about 5 sites as such. It started with the one of Nathan last year. We only started the project itself last year, so that's, I suppose we're running, trying to catch ourselves to a very good extent. And the reason we went for that very fast start is trying to get as much as we could out of CAP and get as much for these sites as possible. So that's the